So, Kim, you remember when I said I was going to make you feel better? Now let me make you feel better. So my project, my proposal to Fulbright in the first place, was based on a couple of premises. First, that the Ministry of Education, Culture, and Tourism has said one of the things that Japanese English learners need the most is help with assertiveness. And at the same time, there's a growing problem in the United States with clinically significant loneliness and social isolation. And in Japan, there's the phenomenon of hikikomori, which, people withdrawing from life and sometimes moving into their bedroom and never coming out again. And so my proposal was, I think that those two issues twine up together. And I think that that learning about assertiveness and argument in the context of healthy relationships is something that could address both of those objectives. And it might help you to know that my earliest background in higher ed, I was a debate coach. But I'm not a debate coach anymore. Now I teach interpersonal communication. But I teach interpersonal from the premise that it really is okay to be direct and be assertive. So some of what I talk about will make more sense if you know that. That's the backstory. The two colleges that I taught at in the fall were Tsuda and Tokyo Gaidai. And the first thing that I'll say is at Tokyo Gaidai, at Tsuda, I was originally scheduled to teach a graduate class that was titled Relational Communication and Loneliness. And it didn't make because nobody signed up for it. And at first, my feelings got hurt, but they said that's actually just because we have so few graduate students. And I talked to my faculty associate 3 nights ago when we had dinner, and she said for the year coming up, it's even worse. So one thing you might want to know that's going to be in the background of a lot of things going on, you know how we talk about in the United States the demographic cliff is coming up at about 2025? Japan got there first. And for a lot of colleges, the shrinking enrollment will bring on some surprises. I'm supposed to, in the spring at Tsuda, teach a graduate class in nonverbal communication. We'll see if it makes, just because I've already heard the graduate enrollment shrunk again. Okay, so what I did teach. At Tsuda, to begin with, I taught argumentation and debate. These are my argumentation and debate students. And they told me from the beginning, we can't argue, we can't debate, we're Japanese. Japanese don't argue, that would threaten wa. And furthermore, Tsuda is a women's college. So all my students were women, and Japanese women especially can't argue. And I said, that's too bad because it's assigned. If you want to pass the class, you're going to need to learn how to debate and participate in some debates. And what always happens. The first debate, they were very shaky, very nervous, but they were surprised that they did it. And then the second debate, they were more confident. And then the third debate, I hit the jackpot. And I did not know that this was going to happen. But the topic for the third debate was that women should be in the line of succession to become emperor. And I stacked that debate to where the weakest, least confident debaters in the class spoke in favor of it. And the best, most effective debaters spoke against it. The way the assignment was set up, students not participating in the debate were the judges. For all the other debates, the vote at the end of the debate was very split, usually like 5-4. For the debate over women succeeding to become emperor, first of all, the debaters got into it. It was the first time I saw them feisty. They were fired up. And it was not a split decision. We had the weaker, less confident debaters arguing for it. They won unanimously. And they came out of that, I think, looking forward to it, realizing they could do it, realizing that in the right situation, they actually enjoyed making their voices heard. So that, for me, was very, very satisfying. So then, meanwhile, over at Tokyo Gaidai, I taught nonverbal communication, an undergraduate nonverbal communication class. And the assignments in there, I did 2 things. I, first of all, picked a bunch of studies from peer-reviewed journals on nonverbal communication topics I thought would interest them. So not the real dry stuff about, not the real dry stuff, the kinds of things where you describe the study to an undergraduate and they say, first of all, I understand that, and secondly, that's cool. I gave them a list that they could choose from. I put them in pairs. I said, read it, discuss it with each other, and then make a video where you explain it and you explain why it matters. Then they posted the video in Moodle, and then they had to watch the video prepared by another pair from the class, and they had to ask an open-ended question that was based that was based on their curiosity. And based on that, their explanations, and I made it clear, you are not to write your report out and just read it word for word. I want to see you looking into the camera, and I've taught public speaking for 30 years. You're not going to fool me if you try to read it from a script. Do it conversationally. And they did an excellent job, and they understood what had come out of the studies, and I was very, very encouraged by that. The other thing I did is I sent them out to do people watching. They had to go to a public place where there were lots of people, and they had to people watch in pairs until they saw at least 3 different nonverbal cues in 3 different channels that they interpreted differently. And then they had to come back and write it up. How did each one interpret it? And after they discussed it, who did they think was right? Not only did they do a great job on this, but they, in their write-ups, many places spontaneously said they enjoyed it, they noticed things they'd never noticed before, and they plan to go on people watching in the future. So that was all very rewarding. Then, Tsuda University has kind of a weird calendar because they have a 9-week class followed by a 9-week class for the undergraduates. Meanwhile, they have a 15-week class for the graduate students at the same time. So I taught 2 classes in the fall term. One ended and the other began. The second class I taught at Tsuda is the next slide. And this is conflict management. So a lot of the same students, you may notice, these are some of the same faces. They took conflict management. We talked about face negotiation theory. How do Japanese people handle conflict differently from Westerners? And we also had a couple of days of role plays to teach basic assertiveness. And at first they tried to tell me, assertiveness, it would never work. But then we did role plays and played little games to demonstrate what assertiveness would look like. That assertiveness is not getting angry and it's not picking a fight. It's actually just having respect for the other person enough to be careful about their feelings, but having enough respect for yourself that you speak up when you need it. And by the end of our round of role plays and games, they were actually very much warming up to the idea. So finally, while I had been teaching a gaidai during the term, my faculty associate there, Yukaku Otori, she approached me and she said, a lot of faculty at gaidai teach 1-week intensive classes. Would you be interested in doing one? And I said, maybe. What kinds of topics? And they brought me a list of topics, and one of them said, Christianity, Unity, and Diversity. And I should have mentioned it before as part of my backstory. I am a Christian, and back in the United States, I teach at a Christian university, a CCCU school. And so I said, could I offer a class in how Christianity helps explain the way Westerners communicate? And the first premise was a study published in Science back in 2019. And I'm going to draw a blank on the name of the researcher, but the idea that the individualist collectivist split has its roots in the Catholic Church in the 5th century outlawing marrying cousins. Because what that did in Europe is it broke up extended clans. And so there are a bunch of other issues that come up in communication where I came up with the idea for this class because as I was researching things like different conflict styles, different arguing styles, it kept showing up in the studies. A big part of this difference is the Christian-Confucian split. And I said, if I'm finding this many different places, and I'm here, and I'm a communication educator, and I also am a practicing Christian, this is an opportunity for me to explain those and try to make sense of it. So I taught that, and this is the next slide, at Tokyo Gaidai. And that was my 1-week intensive class at Gaidai. I had only 3 students in it. One of the students chose not to be on social media, which was perfectly cool with me. She stepped out of this photo. But one student was from Korea, the student on the right was from Japan, and the student on the left was from Italy. But when she was in high school, she had done a several-year exchange in Japan and was fluent. So she's getting her degree at Gaidai. And I loved what Kim was saying earlier about Canva going live. And I probably need to learn that because I had kind of a cruder and more rickety way of doing the same thing. I have a Google form, and it's anonymous. And what I do in a 90-minute class period is I talk for about 45 minutes, and then I leave the room for about 10 minutes while they compose an open-ended question that they're curious about. And then the balance of class is me fielding those questions and also asking them what do they think about their classmates' questions. And that gets them talking. But Canva would probably do it even easier if we were to go live. So I probably need to pick Kim's brain and learn how to do that. Okay. So let me see.
When did it snow in Tokyo?
It snowed. Okay, this was the last week in January. This was Friday. Yeah. And what's really funny is on Wednesday it was so sunny and warm, I thought I didn't even need the hoodie that day. And then on Friday it snowed. Right. Okay. To talk just a little bit about research. At Gaidai, they invited me to do a presentation on recent developments in the effects of high-quality listening, and I did that as a Zoom presentation, which the students were invited to tune into. Participating or being an audience member for research presentations is part of their grade in a lot of classes, so I had about 30 students listen to me talk about what are advances in the effect of high-quality listening on the speaker. I also guest lectured in a colleague's class at SUDA on the same topic, recent developments in what we know about high-quality listening and the effect on the speaker. I have one colleague at SUDA her field is political communication, and I have a project back in the United States that's on the back burner about listening and democratic deliberation, something called democratic uptake. And so I want to collaborate with her on that, and we need to get talking about that. As far as my teaching, this has been a really nice sabbatical. I have some fresh ideas for things I want to do when I return, and I am salivating at the idea of working up a Bushnell in Japan trip in the future. Nice. That I would really, really enjoy. Okay, very briefly, cultural encounters, and then it will be time for whatever follows this. In the fall, I signed up on, one thing I should say is I didn't use Meetup. I mentioned already that I'm a Christian. I teach at a Christian university. I found my tribe here in Japan. I joined a church. I found a Christian colleague at SUDA, and she directed me to some language lessons that are offered from missionaries. So they offer a discounted rate, and they offered me the discounted rate as well. And the friends I made in that class, I still am in regular contact with. And that's kind of how I found my tribe. I have taken lots and lots of field trips. Sometimes I just go to Shotengai just to people watch, or I go to grocery chains I hadn't been to before to see what products they have on the shelves. That gives me a lot of interesting clues. I've gone to lots of museums. I very much recommend the Edo Tokyo Open Air Architectural Museum in Kogane. I am blessed that it's so close to me that I can walk to it. It's a long walk, but I can walk to it. And let's see. Well, okay, Kim, you're going to kill me. Are you ready to forgive me? So I got done with my intensive class at Gaidai, and now it was the break. And so I thought, this is the best chance I'm going to get to do what Marty had wisely been doing in individual small doses. I did all at once. I went in an 18-day whirlwind tour around Japan. And I did not use SmartX. I just went to the JR office in Kokubunji, and I showed them my itinerary with dates, and they sold me all the tickets, one of which was wrong, and that became its own story, which I'll tell you another time. At any rate, so I went to Kanazawa, from Kanazawa to Kyoto, from Kyoto to, I'm sorry, Kim, on February 28th, I was in Fukuoka, and I just didn't think, I know, and you could have told me where all the good stuff was. I'm sorry. I went from there to Nagasaki, from Nagasaki to Osaka, and then I came home. So I did get out of Tokyo. And I stayed 2 or 3 days each place, enough to get a look and to try to get a feel for, of the things I've seen, what's Japanese and what's just Tokyo. Okay, and the final thing I will say, I am just about on every online platform as Doyle in Japan. I'm on Instagram as Doyle in Japan. I'm on Substack. I'm on YouTube as Doyle in Japan. So if you want any of the other pictures, any of the highlights, anything that I did on my whirlwind tour, it's all there. Okay, that's me. Oh, the one other trick. I mentioned before that I had the Google form that students submit questions through. Another thing that I do is I record myself, which I'm currently doing,